Yo, what's up guys, Aspect here, and today we're breaking down the Celestial's Call. And this is one of my larger project files for sure, so I'm going to hop right into it. If you're not familiar with the song, go listen to it, because we're going to be diving down deep on how I made this and my thought process and everything. So the song like immediately starts out with this really low piano. I don't totally love the sound of it anymore, but it's cool for what it is, I guess. So I have this essentially the bass notes being played, and we see that the velocity of the bass notes are a lot higher just because of the piano that I'm using an Imagero piano, and I really recommend this piano. It is really good. It's really good as like a budget sort of option where it's not quite lab soft piano where it's free, but I think it's like 10 or 20 bucks. And they just came out with Imagero Piano 2 as well, which has extra options and extra pianos and stuff. I didn't buy them, but I highly recommend Imagero Piano for low spenders if you want something nice. That's what I've been using for a couple months. I recently upgraded like my piano again. That's not important for this song. But this melody here in the beginning, what key is this in? I don't know how to read music, so I have to use the stupid grid. If you go into the piano roll options, helpers, scale highlighting, that's how I still do it. I don't have that shit memorized. But my thought process for this melody is that I don't even know what my thought process was. There is a thought process. Okay, that's actually interesting. So the melody is sort of just following the bass notes, but it's sort of like making it's always like one semitone up, I'm pretty sure. Okay, not always, but I like to do this thing in my music a lot where I have these sort of two-part like sort of matching harmonies where I'll have like two notes that are played like stuff like that. I don't know. But in this time, I took it a little bit of a different approach in separating the octaves between them. So you can see if we move that down one, we can see that it's very much written in like the quote unquote like aspect style, where they are these sort of like paired up notes. And over here, okay, this is really funny. So I kind of heard both notes at the same time here. So I just put both notes because like I felt like it made sense for it to be in that sort of threes pattern again, but I also still heard the G. So it's sort of in the middle. It's a really weird. I don't even know how to explain that, and that's really funny that I kept that in the final version of the song. It's like, I usually don't do stuff like that. But later on, the melody. I guess we'll just keep going through the song. So in this beginning part here, I have a whole bunch of layered up background noise. This is like an ocean sound effect that I made. I was using Arturia plugins, which I don't have on this computer. I was using them at college. We had a computer lab that had a bunch of music software on it, so I was playing with them. And this was just generated from the noise stuff and using tons of filters. And it was pretty convincing in the end, so that's pretty nice. Then down here, I have the pads from Astral Sea, but they are pitched differently than they are in Astral Sea, so I think they're down one. But yeah, I think that's the exact pad that's in Astral Sea. And then one is just pitched down one, the other one is pitched down 25. So it makes this sort of like really low layer. And together they sort of just meld together to make that sound. And I render the piano out, put it into audio, and then I just have an EQ on it to raise the highs again because I feel like it needed more high end. Processing on the other piano. Where are you? Just a limiter to make it louder, and then Valhalla Room. I have used Valhalla Room. Yeah, that's the intro pretty much. I don't even have like automation on anything. I guess I have it on one of the pads. I think it's the higher pitched one. See, it comes in with only the low pad at first. The low pad starts at full volume and just stays how it is the whole time. And then the higher pitched one comes in and leads you into this next section here. See, I have this Foley drum that I've been using that Visnode gave me like 3 years ago that I still use all the time. Just kind of like free white noise. I think I put more reverb on it or something. Yeah, reverb and then an EQ that barely does anything. So just got the transition, easy. How you make this is just layer fucking Foley on a drum. You can just like down like the Cashmere drum packs. Is what I do. Like the, what are they called? There was the one that got him in legal trouble for stealing Doom samples. Cashmere Volume 3. You could just download that one for free without feeling bad because he stole samples anyways, as long as they're not using them. But that's basically what you can do there. And there's really nice orchestral drums in these, but you gotta edit them. You can't just use them, otherwise people are gonna notice that it's Cashmere drums. But I don't know, people won't notice. So I still have the ocean sound effects layered in on here, but now I'm automating the volume of it to make it sound more like waves and not just like an overlying white noise pattern. So yeah, that's just kind of what that's doing. I just kind of drew the shape for fun. And then as well as that, I have another sort of like wave coming in, which is this crazy sound design. And he's just sort of just peeking in. I can talk more about that later, I think. Because this sound design is nutty, and this was not in the intro originally. It got sort of retroactively added into it later, because I thought it would be really cool to introduce this early. And then I have this huge tail from these snares. Okay, this is actually interesting. I forgot about this. But this song started from a cut section of Forsaken Lyriqua, the song that was made for the Etherflux Boss Fight album by like Zai, Sleepy, Viznote, and who else was on it? Oh, there's somebody else on it, wasn't there? I have to look. I have to look now. But that song is so good, and there was a sort of like a cut drop from it, and I just took that, and I was like, let me try to make something off of that. So I tried to make something off of that, and it wasn't really happening. So what ended up happening? Oh yeah, there's fucking Codley, Aka, and the Wi-Fi on it. There's a lot of people that were involved in that song, but I took this one unused drop from it, which basically just gave me these two drums. Which are extremely loud. It gave me those two drums and some random sound design that we'll see throughout the drop. But it started out as a really dark and evil sort of thing with like crazy rhythm. And I sort of turned it in this more, it's like melancholic in a way, but it's still like uplifting in some like, I guess, inspiring way. But I just totally shifted focus and I'm like, I don't think that this is going to match what we're working on. So I just took it under my own thing and they're like, they're okay with it. So yeah, I have those drum samples, and I don't know how you make those. They're just crazy. It's just so much Foley and a huge like smack. Those ones are really good. I've never made ones that are as good as this. But yeah, more layers in here. Just layer tons of stuff, basically. We still have the Astral Sea pads going in the background the whole time. Stuff like this is really important for my music, where it's just like, it just sort of adds to the ambience and builds up a lot of sounds that everything sort of layers on top of each other and creates a sort of like bed or like environment for the song to sit in. And I love doing stuff like this. Fills up easy space and it's good. Sometimes it'll probably be a little bit muddy, but honestly, I don't care. What is this? Okay, so that's the strings. I tend to render stuff out when I'm mixing it. So I have this solo violin. Don't really remember how or why I wrote it the way that I did, but it's sort of meandering around without ever reaching the tonic. So like it never actually hits D, and it just sort of wanders around a bit, which I think is interesting. And it's sort of like indicative that this is only the start of the journey, I guess, as we're sort of setting things up still. And I also have the piano following it as well. No, did not do any velocity automation on this, but you know what, it works. Okay, so this is interesting. These are some weird reverse chime sounds. I have a whole other song that will never come out that that came from, which was based around the concept of the Empyrean Cities University, which nobody knows what that is unless you play my D&D campaign in Etheria. But essentially just this giant university. And I made just like a theme song for it. And it was pretty fun. Stuff like I think I'm gonna be reusing the samples from this and like every song it's gonna be when I'm working on for the near future because I really like that, but it's never gonna come out. Maybe I might show it off as a bonus at the end of the video if I remember. I don't know. But yeah, just for this little intro part, is still a lot of layers, and I kind of popped off. Not gonna lie. And then transition to the next part, we have the eclipsed plane. Fucking, I'm just blatantly reusing samples, but nobody can notice. I didn't even pitch it down. It's not even doing. There's no filtering on it. I just threw it into a thing for nothing. Yeah, and there's the eclipse plane. This is just the kick. And it works really well for this. I love how this thing, it's really low-end focus. There's a lot of rubble going on in it. I think this is another Visnode thing. Or it might have been Zai. I don't remember who made it. But that's sick. And I also layered it with this other thing. Just basically the high end from the kick, from the other kick that I'd received. So it sort of combines them, makes something new. Ocean effects is still being automated like waves. You can see that the automation is all over the place, but it's still happening. I get disorganized, but it's organized in a chaotic way. The kicks, some of them at this point might be coming in more. So we have in these, which is interesting, is that, they're actually high passed, I think. I don't think it's being automated. But some of these have a lot of low end in them. And I want it to come in gradually, and they sort of get longer and longer as it goes on, very like subtly. I think that made it into the final version. You can kind of tell from the way, maybe it didn't, I don't know. I don't think it actually did. You can see that the squiggles line up, but it's still building more waves, that kind of thing. The idea I was trying to convey at this point was just sort of like a coastal kind of thing, where you're somebody that's walking along like a coastline to some objective. And if you read like the lore description in the SoundCloud, you'll have a better idea what I'm talking about. But adding more layers in here, because this is just sort of like a pickup where more layers of instrumentation come in. So let's see what we got. Okay, piano, of course. Oh yeah, the dull bass, just sort of plain bass notes. I didn't fix the panning on it. I usually do nowadays, but yeah, usually these are panned pretty weirdly. Probably because I have a respace. Yeah, I do. So it doesn't matter anyways. Probably would have been better for me to fix that, but I forgot about it or whatever. So the respace is really simple. I use this all the time. You don't need to overdo it with these. We just need like a little bass note background. Don't overdo it. Literally just a sine wave, default fucking detune, 7 unison. A little bit of 0 square distortion. Probably doesn't even do anything. You can barely hear it. Compressor, multiband. That does a lot. And I just have an extra filter on it so that I can macro it. Don't remember how much I used that in this, but I sort of use this for all my songs. It's very useful. Recommend doing things like that, especially if you use stuff a lot. Or I mean like a specific sound a lot. Like a respace is really simple and just provides a lot of space in the low end. And they're really useful, so I just use them all the time like that. And then the piano down here. Still rendered out. Okay, I can talk about the piano again. I can go back to it. So the melody up here changes once it gets to this next part. So it goes from the sort of intro melody to a new descending melody. And it's sort of descending to let you know that you're going somewhere, because the previous melody was just kind of looping around and doing its thing. But now that we're descending down, it literally feels like that. You're descending down into something. So that's basically the thought process behind writing that. And again, similar ideas where I have those paired up notes, but they're shifted up 1 octave this time. And then we got the big boy. I don't remember how I wrote this. I literally just doubled the octave. I literally just doubled everything and it worked. No chords, we don't need them. I guess some part of me wanted to keep this feeling empty in a way. Even though it was being filled up so much with those extra layers, it still feels rather like something is missing to it almost, I guess. Where's the strings? Here they are. So in the second half of this is a pretty easy common trick. I probably even did this in Astral Sea, I don't remember, but take the same melody, up 1 octave. Instantly more tense, instantly progresses the song. Some people probably notice, think it's cheesy, whatever, I don't care. I'm not writing a new melody when the same melody do the trick. So this reverse section into the first drop, or I guess the pre-drop. There's this really cool reverse that I made for a different song that I'm working on that hasn't come out yet. And it sounds pretty cool. I don't even remember how I made that. It's just a lot of noise, a lot of cool stuff. I think there's some basses that are in this song, but that are also in that song. Huge fuck off reverb, 6.9 seconds on that bitch. Let's get it. Fruity Balance, use it all the time. Weird EQ that probably just heard a weird thing. And yeah, we're off to this little pre-drop thing. As long as I didn't miss anything, let me just make sure. Yep, okay, cool. So I love this part. It's probably my favorite part of the song, just this little thing right here. So the piano ends up playing just the same chord over and over. And I've taken a lot of the piano notes and shifted them up an octave. So it comes in instantly with this piano in the highest octave it's been in so far. And it just pops out, like it's nice. I don't know. It totally shifts the mood too, I feel like. Where this feels really like sort of open and fresh. The other ones felt more empty or constricted in a way. I'm not sure how to describe it, but this part is definitely necessary to make the drop, to sell it. And I again use the same Foley drum. If you make cool sounds like this, just reuse them and layer more stuff on top of them. There's no point in making up new ones every single time, unless you can do something else is really cool with them. So yeah, more of these snares and kicks being reversed, keeping that whole wavy theme. I throw in a rain sample now. You can kind of hear it. It gets overshadowed by a lot of the other sounds, but it definitely adds in a lot to the background and the overall mood of this section. And then Astral Sea pad's still going. I was messing around with the Lunaris reverses, I guess. This came from Lunaris, just kind of like a reverb send and like a weird noise. I kind of used it as a snare in like the middle build-up section of that song, and I thought it was really cool. That was inspired by A Broken Serenity by Silver, or I guess Soccerburst when she wrote it. And yeah, if you like listen to like the 7th minute of that song, something similar to that happens, and that was just so cool. What else? I don't remember this at all, but this is some kind of, oh, that's interesting. So I just have these sort of like high-pitched string notes that are playing on top, and it's just one note. It's this F note. No real reason I picked F, it just sounded how I wanted it to. And instead of playing the note again, I pitched it down. And it makes a much different sound, which I think is interesting. Instead of just actually playing the proper note, it's sort of unnatural in a way, but it still sounds good. And both of those start at low volume and they go up to higher volume as the build progresses. Whoa, okay, let me go into the first drop, baby. Now this, I kind of popped off hard on this. Also got kind of carried by Visnode and Zai's sound design for the first half of it, but the second half is mostly me. So, good lord, where do I even start? We have this huge kick and snare that I've mentioned before. So those are sort of like the background of everything. And the noise that these add does so much to just fill it up for no reason. It's just so much high end. Just an absurd amount of high end. And you can even see in like the sort of thing up here, like the monitor, that there's not a lot of high end in these basses. That's because these basses are pitched down like a whole octave from where they should be. And the whole design, I guess the design of those was really interesting. I should just make some videos on my bass design ideas, but it's because it's hard to explain without seeing the file. and the file is like totally gone because it gets buried. But a lot of this bass design over here. I guess I could try to just explain the processing on it is easier. So this first section, these are made using Man from Soul's sign compression video. I mentioned that before. I still use that all the time. Love that. But these have been fucked up and run through so much processing that it probably doesn't even matter how I made them in the first place. So like these have been like notched up, like 5 notches, doing whatever the hell you want to do, random shit with Neuro bass. And then after that, like regranularized, and then put through Portal, and then regranularized again, and then pitched down. And then when I put them in the file, I fucking process them again. So this is what it sounds like with no processing. Pretty close to being the same, but the processed version has, I guess, more split up frequencies in like a way where they're more evenly balanced. Because the first one, I think, has much more like low end and lesser high end. It kind of just sounds like OTT. What was I using this for? I like compressed this like 3.5 to 7K region. I don't know why I did that. And then I got rid of the stereo on the bass. That's what that is. This is an EQ that probably gets automated because something, a very specific sound is probably too loud. So I need to just automate that on when that one played specifically. That's doing a whole lot. Compression. Switch the dynamics a little bit, not all the way though for these because I didn't want to. That EQ is doing a lot. Increase the volume by 0.5 dB, and then a balance on top of it to automate the volume if I need to. It'd definitely be more interesting if I had the original file these came from, because that was these got fucked with a lot in that file. But I don't have it. I don't remember where it is. Okay, this is really interesting. The whole choir that sits behind this entire drop does so much for it. Okay, so there's actually multiple layers to it. So the one layer is a choir. Oops, I didn't even do that. So we have these choir awes, and they're sort of playing like notes in the octave of this melody that was playing in the build-up. And this is that same like meandering melody from the intro that never like really concludes itself. So we're sort of just like in this whole ass whirlwind of shit going on in this drop. And that's kind of like the idea of it was, that you're just kind of in this crazy place where the ground beneath you is cracking apart and fucking magic energy is flying everywhere, stuff like that. And yeah, so there's more layers than that. I just gotta find them because this is very unwieldy, as we could see. Astral Sea pads still in the background. They're literally behind the whole song. That's not what I wanted to hear. I know there's flutes and stuff going on. Here it is. So this might be the same flute from Astral Grove. I don't remember, but it's very similar. And I try to do stuff like that pretty often to sort of have like callbacks to my older stuff. And see, there's a lot of muted stuff in this because I had a lot of ideas that didn't work out. Like I had the piano playing during this, but I figured it was a really good time to drop it off and not use it anymore. What is this? Oh, I forgot about this. There used to be this like bell that played throughout this. I don't think it's the right pitch though. You can't even hear because the mixing got better and then this got drowned out. I'm not gonna fix it. But there used to be this bell that played throughout it that was pretty cool. These volume automations, these are side chains, which the side chain isn't really doing very much because the fucking low end on this is so huge, it doesn't even matter. Probably doesn't sound good on a big system, but whatever. I don't care, and I don't know. What is this? This is a sound effect. What is this from? What is this from? I have no idea what that's from. It's probably some video game though. Just throw in video game samples randomly. You can barely even hear it. It like layers with the bass, kind of. Yeah, just basically just throw random samples in your music and you're fine, guys. So the bass is I can't even explain how this bass is going. You just gotta have a feel for it, and it's the unfortunate part about it. See, stuff like that right there, this was purposely placed how it is to be sort of like rhythmic in a way. So it's sort of, you can see in the waveform that it sort of drops out. And when I have this ton of compression on it, it'll make up for it and basically just punch in, like, it's probably just a little bit of high end or a little bit of the low end, but it's going to try to bring that volume up to meet the sort of like standard compression value that I have. And it's going to create an interesting rhythm because it sounds like a totally different sound. Yeah. And also, these are all rendered together. I had these separately before, probably, but I might have deleted them. Or maybe this was just one straight shot. Yeah, I think it's actually just a straight shot of the sound design where literally like 4 seconds of it almost was just perfect for what I needed for the song. And it kind of, you'll change where it's like you'll need to make a longer section, a bunch of chopped up little parts, or have something like this where it just happens to work. And then I have this little sound that is transitioning. It's just another bass. It's really low pitched and fucked up. So this is probably Zai or Visnote's Foley right here. And then I just sort of have layered on some weird noises from the sound design session. And then some other Foley. Some clicky granular stuff. Then a respace comes in for this part for some reason. It's just sort of a different idea. Where the idea is you don't want to repeat anything, so just layering tons of stuff. I'm adding in extra Foley and sound design to sort of act as like a percussion hit. And when the points these cut off are really specific at, sometimes, and then other times, like I just want Foley to layer. It's like this is like some kind of just environmental sound. I just have the layer on top at full volume the whole time, and it cuts out at a really specific part and lets this other bass play. And then simultaneously, all this Foley is sort of acting like drums almost. This is more like, I don't know what this is. This might be Dark Souls sound effects. I don't know. Yeah, you can tell. I think it's exactly what it is. It's like Dark Souls 1 sound pack that I downloaded. You can tell it's just mono. That's how I know it's that one. Probably should have added a little something to sterilize it, but it's okay. It works really well anyways, and it sort of plays with the space really well. I also rendered out the respace here because my FL Studio's been bugging out, where if I have a bass note in here, but I cut off the pattern, it'll still play the full length of the note in this pattern, despite the pattern being shorter. So I don't know why that happens. And then I think this is automating the volume of the Reese. Yeah, I kind of just needed a side chain in a way, so I just threw it in there. This is a Visnote bass. This is where the Visnote basses start to come in because they're so good, and they were in the original cut part, and they're just really good. It's just crazy. I didn't have to process it more. Some just reverse parts from the original ID. Then these are mine up here. I think it's actually a mix. This first part is from the original ID. So the sort of like really very talky part is Viz nodes, and then mine comes in over here. And it's sort of just these, sort of just like convolving white noise sounds that are just sort of flowing back and forth. And again, this is done for like rhythmic purposes where it's not just one long sound, and all of it was just done by feel. I have an EQ being mixed out. I guess this is the part where that little bit of a decrease in the high end was necessary. And I did attempt to do a sub bass for this, but that got cut because the sub, it was not working out, and I needed to spend a lot more time with it than I needed. And I liked how it sounded without it, so fuck it. This is a really cool sound. Just some old basses I found that were cut from fragments. This is like a cone sound bass session by Viznode, and I just like processed it a bunch extras, so just really like phasery, liquid kind of stuff. Throw vocoder on it or some shit. This sort of like really metallic and grainy bass was from the original ID. I don't know how to do these, but they're so good. So now that that's done, the first half of this drop, everything was very, like all the basses were very stereo, very strange, very, I guess, non-traditional in a sense, where like if I showed like a dubstep producer that, they'd be like, you gotta cut the low end and add in a sub. So the second half of this contrasts in that a lot of it is like very, it has very like defined sub bass, and it's just more traditional neuro basses where you can sort of hear the sine wave in it. And I thought that was really cool. And this little transition bass I just love so much. So that right there, that's just fucking sick. I can't even explain it. It's just so good. Automating the snare volume occasionally for some reason. I don't know. I have a random sub drop. And if you use 3x os, you can do these notes where you can do a slide note. Put the velocity of the slide note down if you want, and it'll go quieter. This time I didn't because maybe I wanted the sub to be loud the whole time. I don't know why. But I do stuff like that pretty often. You can't really hear it, just you feel it more. A little bit of just a weird cut from the sound design, transition. Just more sort of rhythmic stuff. And I remember this bass was a little bit too short, so I just moved it forward, and it's basically it's being sidechained, but you wouldn't even hear it because the fucking kick is so loud. So it doesn't matter. There's no bass playing here for a fraction of a second. These are pretty standard, just like neuro sound design patches. There might be more processing to it. I feel like I've double processed it. I don't remember what it's called, if it's even in there. Oh yeah, they're down here. Look at that. This is bad. Don't do this. Don't notch the bass in the file. But it's fine because I needed it to sound a very specific way. Literally, I heard this the way the notches were being put on the bass, so I did it in the song. Because usually it's a generative process where you just make a whole bunch of random sounds and you lay them in. But in this case, I literally just heard it and I'm like, I have to make it. So this is going into 20. And I'm isotope trashing this. Probably isn't even doing very much. A weird EQ, that's where the notches are. It's also boosting the high end by a lot in Vocodex. Putting it down, modular pitch shift down an octave. I usually put the bandwidth somewhere in this area. That's kind of where it goes. Sometimes I drag up the modular unison order, but I did not this time. That just kind of adds like a more of a chorus effect to it. So, yeah. These are missing a lot of high end, so I sort of used the distortion and stuff to make up for it, and also EQing the high end way up. That's how you do that. Fizz node bass. This is a really good one. I really enjoy this bass. It turned out really well. I'm pretty sure this came from a Nero sound design session where I was using square waves and a lot, maybe not even square waves, but a lot of white noise. And I'm automating the rain modulation somewhere probably. Maybe not in this file, but at some point I did. And I use the kilohertz rain mod, and it basically just does it for me where it just modulates the volume like bun and dun like up and down like how it is right there. So I love that kind of stuff, and I use it pretty often. It is really good, and it adds more variety and more rhythm into it, which is needed in a drop like this where the drums only hit once in a blue moon. Don't know what that EQ is for. This is also a really cool bass. You can tell there's a lot of high end missing from them because I've said that they're pitched down a lot in this case. So all the extra stuff from the Foley and the percussion help cover that up. So this is probably my biggest regret with the song. I used to have an extra sound layered here, but I lost it. I think it just got like, I don't even know what happened to it, but it used to be here. And I liked it, but it's gone now. So now I just have a sub drop. And it has a certain kind of effect where everything else was so densely layered, and all of a sudden you hit this part where it isn't, and you're sort of coming back up to the surface. And that was, again, done by the next part in this transition, where I put just like an underwater sound in. Yeah, I like how I had that rendered into the bass chain. That's interesting because it's being processed in the same way as the basses are, it sort of sounds like it is one. And I'm pretty sure I literally just like Googled like underwater sound and threw it in there. So that's pretty epic. All right, that was a lot to talk about. How deep am I? How long have I been recording? 37 minutes, nice. Well, we're not done yet. So I also have a boomer, as I like to call them. Just a kick with low pass, pretty big one. Usually it's around like 240 something, works. Big reverb. And then you get a boomer. Love them, they're so useful. Okay, so next up, this little sort of ambient part going out. So one thing that I've been trying to do is that now that Fragments is over, I'm sort of returning to some of the Light Spirit ideas, where I used a lot of like high-pitched square waves like that. And this one wasn't even a square wave. This is just like a weird sound I made with an Arturia plugin. And I turned on like the FM and just got really weird sounds out of it and recorded them, and that's where we got. This is a 3x OSC. What is this? Just an extra like sine wave that's being played. So what's interesting is that I have the chorus pitch down 24 in this one and up 7 in this one. So it's sort of playing a little chord inside of it, and I'm pitching it around, as we can see. So I just have this slidey chord. And I use that trick I talked about earlier with the slide note that with 0 velocity to make it just go away. That's pretty cool. What is this? Choir off. Yeah, use that a lot. This is a bass. Serum, Reese bass, big. Yeah, just kind of choir layered in for fun. Adds an extra layer. And then I purposely only used 1 octave of the choir this time because we just had this huge choir where I was using like every octave that I had in the patch. But now we're sort of stripping things back a bit. Ocean sound effects back, restart the astral sea pads, underwater sounds going down. So yeah, that's the higher pitched square wave thing I was talking about. These even being routed anywhere. 44. Chorus, weird EQ, Valhalla room. Pretty typical. I have it coming back twice, it looks like. So there's 2 different notes being played here, and they're sort of just adding an extra ambience, and there's sort of just a little drone. Like those a lot. What is this? Higher pitch version of it to sort of harmonize with it. And together they sound pretty cool. I don't even know what this pad is. It's just a random pad that I had. Huge underwater, just low pass sound. Weird EQ wave shaper for some reason. Just filling up the low end. Whatever isn't being filled in by the Reese is being filled in by this. I guess I wanted this to feel like somewhat like you're underwater still, or like you're in water in a way as you're sort of like trying to surface up and get away from it. That's pretty cool. Build up. We return to the piano motif. Get a little bit of this going on, some bigger chords going on. A little bit of strumming there. Yeah, pretty normal. Introduce the lady. This is the lady that we used all throughout Fragments. It's I don't know what it is. It's messed up, but it's Mel. It's from East West, so sounds really good. Sort of a callback to other songs, my discography, like that. But as while I'm calling back to other things, we're still transitioning to the new. And this is very much a transitionary song for me, since this is the first song I made mostly alone. 95% alone, probably more than that. But yeah, this is the first song I made on my own in a very long time, like years and years, so it's pretty important to me. So what do you do when you don't know what to do next? Layer in more instruments. 2 octaves of choirs. Big piano. I don't know how this one's different. It says this melody on top, the recurring melody from the first drop. Some strings are playing a new melody. Because by now, if I just kept repeating the same melodies, it'd get old, so I just wrote a new little thing. I think that's new. I don't think that was used elsewhere. Or maybe it's kind of based off of the descending melody from the other build-up in a way. Nothing too inventive, though. It's a very mid melody for me. I sort of just had to get this done, just get it transitioned, get it over with. And then we get into this really cool, I really love this whole drop over here. Both halves of it I love a lot, so just jump into that. The kick, we have it reversing. We see it's chopped up all weird. It's just a cool rhythm. I use this rhythm like all the time. It's probably gonna get old really soon, but I just enjoy stuff like this. Then we have this little neuro bass playing at the same time. I think it was just reused from the first drop. These automations are, I think, but the bass itself is different. That's an easy trick to get more mileage out of your time. So the huge ass snare hits. It doesn't even hit on the beat exactly. It hits a bit early, as you could see. And I'm pretty sure just because it felt good, like the bass, it just sounded like it hit like that. Yeah, I can't really explain that, but that's how it happened. Then we got these big chords. I just kind of call them like block chords, I guess. They just want to convey a mood more than a melody. Just throw a ton of stuff at it. Literally just playing the whole scale out real quick. Throw on the Goddess Moon Lady, why not? So what's interesting is that not all that sound comes through with all the layering I'm doing. So a lot of the cool stuff that comes through are these weird sounds that are made by the just weirdness going on with the grains when I regranularize these sounds. So you'll hear like these weird... You hear that little part a lot. So I guess just layering stuff like that on Even though it might not sound good on its own, when it's layered in, it sounds great. And this was a stroke of genius. I love this part. So we got the boomer coming in, and then we got just a pretty basic solo violin to keep things moving along. Sort of like we're playing a little bit of a melody here, but not really, with the whole notes up here. It's sort of like a melody, but not really. It's just kind of traveling. This is the melody from earlier reversed, I'm pretty sure. Yep. That's from the first, the little build-up for the first drop, just reversed this time. Automating the reverb off hard right here because I need everything to shut up so I can do this. So I've been really enjoying stuff like this lately, which is just short little glitch parts where I have this, like these big fuck off, just these extremely loud environmental sounds that just overpower everything and cut in suddenly, but it still feels natural. It's weird to explain how I figured that out or why I'm starting to do that, but I just really enjoy this sound. The kick reverse is still going on, but the kick reverse also cuts out and comes back in. It's just interesting. I don't know. Had fun with that. Then we go to the next part, I guess. Actually, we have this first. This is just some like revel sound effect reverse. This is some, I don't know what that is. It's gonna be really loud if I play it. Basically nothing else layered there. These don't look like a lot of layers, but a lot of stuff built into these because to make like a revel effect, you got to do a lot of work, or you got to just record one or find a sound pack. What I do is just steal them from video games, so you don't got to do any of that. But deceptively few audio clips, but a lot of layers going on right there. I'm like sidechaining the bass too. This time the flute comes in, basically just making a ton of different instruments come in and out all throughout this, and it's very fun to write. Also, this is just the same Nero bass again. I just moved, or I'm not saying it's the same notching again, but I just moved. You take the slip tool and just go around like this, and you just make new basses instantly. That's what I did there. This one needed a new chord for some reason, so I want to hit this G note, I guess. The flute is playing that melody because it can. I don't know why I made it do that. Astral C pads. They're only playing for a short period here. So they actually drop out in this section. I guess the pads are being replaced by these new chords in a way, because these pads are also kind of just playing like a full octave. Like they're just playing the full scale, because how I make them is you take a piano melody and just blur it in Edison, and that just basically means that the whole scale gets blurred together, and it just makes this sort of like layered up sound. So yeah, those are gone now, and we have these. What is this? I gotta remember how I made these because I love this sound. This is kind of like Hyper Light Drifter inspired stuff. If you ever played that game and fought the final boss Judgment, that's the kind of what I was going for this. Those kind of sounds. Keeping it going with the high choir. And don't forget how loud this Foley is during all this too. Like that's how loud it is, and it matches, it melts together really well somehow. I have like a sub snare right here where it's just like a secondary snare that also hits. This is another really old one. I think this came from the Land of Dreams. I'm almost positive it did. That song is so bad now looking back on it, but it's okay. But yeah, secondary snare, just kind of needed it. Sounded like I needed it. Felt like I needed it, so I put it in. You can see it's muted over here. I didn't need it this time for some reason. Maybe because the timing was off, because I just felt like the snare had to hit earlier. I don't know. Interesting stuff going on here, though. Then we continue going with melodic stuff, transition with basses. We return to this thing and more reverse piano. This is some really messed up piano, which I pitched it down like a lot, and it got a really interesting sound out of it. And what's interesting is that when you pitch piano down instead of just playing the lower octave, you also pitch down the noise associated with recording the piano sound. So it's just a cool idea. It's just a cool thing that you can do. Just more strings written to further transition things. I have the piano playing this time now. So there's a few layers of piano going on here. We have the reverse piano, which is sort of harmonizing with this melody. And then these really low notes that are unnaturally pitched down, sort of playing the bass notes. And these aren't even on the grid properly. These are meant to be very much disjointed and I guess sort of free from the overall grid of this drop, because this whole drop is very like fluid and just sort of, it's just crazy. I don't even know how I did it. Love to see that. Cutting off the volume again. So you might be expecting me to do this again and do the whole like that kind of thing again. But instead of that, we just cut totally to like one piano note and nothing else. And the piano it cuts to are these. And this part is just so fucking good. And by cutting out everything like that, it sort of makes this moment where you're surprised and you're like, oh, there's no more layers. But then this fucking massive section just slams your ass and it's like, goddamn. And I think it was very effective because a lot of people like freaked out over this and told me it was really good. So I had a lot of fun making this part too. Basically layer the basses and the sounds. That's what this drop is. So I'm using that technique that I was talking about again, where I cut out and put environmental noises in. A lot of the basses I've been designing lately are heavily reverbed and pitched, so they sort of sound like environmental sounds, like this. Maybe that actually is an environmental sound, maybe it's not a bass. Yeah, this is just rubble. Another interesting thing I'm doing is the piano that plays on top of this is going... So it's this melody again. But I rendered it out. Is this it? Yeah, it is. So I rendered it out and we have what I usually don't, this is something I don't usually do, but I rendered it out and I have these long automation clips that are automating the effects on it. And that's not, are these it? I don't think those are it. I gotta find where the effects actually are. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in here because I've like rendered and unrendered things a million times. Actually, I think this is it. 51. Yeah, here it is. So I have reverb, panning, and this ridiculous EQ going. The panning is also interesting. The panning is sort of just acting like a range modulation kind of, because the volume is. I guess we'll see when we get to it. But I just have a huge reverb. Yeah, huge 16-second decay. But it doesn't matter how long the decay is because I'm just making it go in and out. And when the reverb does come up, it has this huge just like wall of reverb sound. And I like that because the reverb is sort of calculating the whole time what the reverb is going to be. And because that, it blurs to like the whole scale together, makes that huge. It's just sort of like making the astral C pad a different way. But because the reverb is always on, I'm just automating the volume on and up, is that it's still calculating and it'll have this huge sound. So we could hear that. Let me just mute everything but the piano because this is probably what makes this drop work the most. Like I could just like go through the basses and tell you how they sound, but like this is probably the thing that makes it work the hardest. The Panomatic is sort of adding this like wobbly sound to it, while the reverb is reverbing it and the EQ is making it go to that sort of like it's kind of like a radio transmission sort of sound. And the only reason you do that is just to like contrast it harder. It's hard to mix shit like that too, but it got done. So this is the oh, here's why I'm using ring mod. This is on 18. We have a notch. We have vocoder. It's off. I guess I didn't like the way it sounded. Huge wave shaper. Slamming the compressor this time. Full dynamics all the way up. Small EQs just for different things that I heard. Just getting the sound right. Then I use this to sort of, I guess, modulate the volume of it in a way. You can hear the difference with it on and off. It does a lot for that sound. And then I just throw a balance at the end in case I want to automate the volume, which I probably do somewhere. See, I like that bass a lot. That's cool. This was the same, this is reversed. I don't even know why. It's the same sound design session as a lot of the basses from the second half of the first drop came from, which is just the Nero basses with white noise. And this drop needed the basses to be more, I guess, grounded and less of those super stereo ones. So that's why these ones just worked, these more traditional Nero basses. Can't even hear the ocean, but it's layered in the background. Probably feel it more than you hear it. Just short cuts of the Nero basses. Just a little like it's kind of a cool sound. Transitions gets messed up by the kick at the same time, distorted into each other. Sounds cool. Bringing in the Astral C pads for just a moment. Got some random Foley on top of that too. Just kind of watery Foley. It's called Febreze. Probably someone was using the can and shaking it, and that's where the file came from. More little reverses. This is a reverse snare from earlier. Just throw stuff like that all over when you're doing the little hard cuts like these. A little bit of an error right there. That should be like that, but you know what? You don't even hear it. There's so much going on. So this is one of those really reverbed out basses from earlier. These kind of things are just really cool. Took out the low end of it because the low end is fucked on these. Because like I think I mentioned it like twice now, probably they're pitched down a whole octave from where they should be. So the low end gets really messed up. If you do stuff like that, throw in a low cut, throw in at like 20 hertz probably. Otherwise you're gonna get weird effects and it's gonna take up all your headspace. It's the only time I'll actually care about low end is when I'm using weird sounds like that that really aren't supposed to be used at all, but they sound cool. Random white noise. I guess it adds a little bit rhythmically to that. Yeah, whatever. I will do anything in my power to add to things rhythmically without having to do drums, because I still am very bad at drums. I'm doing this sort of like triplet pattern. I'm changed the piano to also match that. And the way that I did it originally was I just chopped the piano MIDI instead of just doing instead of writing new notes. Actually, here it is right here. I chopped the render of it. So that turned out really well. More of these kind of things. And it just repeats twice because it's really short. But yeah, pretty nice. I don't even think I added an extra layer here. What is this? Stuff that shouldn't be there. It's muted. Not good. Oh yeah, I love this outro here. Get rid of all the processing real quick. And the piano just very gently lays down at the very end of it and just gets this huge reverb like pillow. It's beautiful. I love it. One of my other favorite parts of the song. Like, this is just so good. And right when you think it's done, I'm not done. I had to do this song for an assignment at school, and it had to be 6 minutes long, so I just threw in this extra part to it. And yeah, it's pretty sick. I like this part a lot as well. So just bring it back with the piano again. This time I changed the notes around. They're all squished up together. They're all squished up in the upper half, like the upper octaves. Velocity is way down. I've changed all of them like very specifically to get the chord to sound how I wanted it to. Because like say I don't know, like they just, if you mix, you can do your mixing on individual notes by messing with the velocity, basically is what I was doing here. And then I even had the melody in here as well, as we could see. Just a pretty interesting little thing here. Kind of looks like a pirate ship. Looks like a little boat if I put like a little... It's like MIDI art. But yeah, it kind of does look like a ship. I like that. Ocean sound effects in the background again. If you make a good sound, reuse it. It's probably... This is pitched up a bit. By pitching it up, it's sort of changing the feel of it. So I'm not really reusing it. I'm not technically reusing it, so it sounds a bit different when you pitch it up. Then we go into this little section here, which is just kind of like extra build-up section. And yeah, using more of the same techniques where I'm cutting in and out of small bursts of Foley and ambient sounds. I guess my newer philosophy with a lot of these is to sort of use ambient sounds, Foley, and basses interchangeably to the point where you can't tell a difference between any three of them. Or previously I was using mostly Foley and basses. Now I'm using stuff that I'm designing just from like white noise, where I'm making environmental sounds also throw in. And that's inspired a lot by the 2014 World's Porter Robinson live tour like interlude song, where it's just like a whole bunch of ambient songs and ideas just strung together in a really quick sort of like 20-second transition between two of his songs. That little thing has always stuck with me, and this is sort of like me channeling those ideas into my own work. This is cool. I'm using that low piano note from earlier as like a snare kind of. Or it's like not really a snare, but that's what it's sort of acting like, as we could see. And then the kick here is a big boomer. And then the piano's, the choir's coming back playing this sort of descending melody. I think this is reused from the other part of the song. And again, we're just sort of signifying that we're going somewhere, building up, more sounds. This is a cool sound. I'll make a video one day on how I make these, because I don't know how that one was made specifically. Sorry. Oh, and these like wavy snare reverses came back from the intro with some extra ones transitioned to the boomers. When you're using these, sometimes you gotta make them hit a little bit earlier than you think to make them sound on beat. More Foley being layered on top of basses. Oh, respace with the serum macro going up, making it give it a little crunch, a little bit of a crunch. And what's interesting in this section is that these glitchy ambient cuts are coming in, but the backing instrumental is not leaving this time. So everything is sort of homogenizing and coming together for this big ol' outro where I didn't put that much effort into it, but I've still really enjoyed it, and how it came out is really good, and I love it. So I have this, the piano notes, I'm just pitching them at this point, playing them like a piano, down an extra note, down 2 extra notes, and then we get this little progression going down of these cool notes. Probably just done that in a sampler, but I don't care. So this big ol' ambient section comes in. This is the first drop Paul stretched. Literally just threw the first half of the song into Audacity and made that. And it works really well. When you throw stuff like weird basses and all the snares and stuff into a Paul stretching algorithm, you get cool stuff like this. This is sort of how the first drop in Goddessman was made too, by just throwing in sounds all together into weird processing chains. And it has this like a lot of high end on it because the kick and snare have so much high end, and it blurred them all together. So yeah, that's how that happened. I am processing a little bit. I have this EQ on it, taking out a bunch of the low end because the basses are weird and they made a lot of weird low end. Taking a chunk out of the like 3000 area, and then big old reverb. So that's how that backing drone was made. And I have some kind of subtle stuff in the background. Yeah, just kind of makes there's somewhat of a through line for you to follow throughout this. There isn't much in terms of melody, it just kind of goes. You probably can't even really hear that. What you really hear is this fucking S280F inspired basses in the bottom here. So these basses I've been talking about all this whole time, they've been pitched down. I pitched them back up here to where they should be, and they're completely fresh over here, and they sound really cool. When you're doing stuff like this, you want to put on the huge compressor onto them because you don't want the sounds to be drowned out. And this will push up the low sounds back up to the point where you hear everything. I hope that made sense. Probably a bad explanation. And like that noise like just comes out of the Paul stretch. And I just wanted some extra layers, so I threw in a flute. That's a violin, not a flute. But yeah, I just threw that in. It sounded good and it needed it. There's the flute. Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of had fun with this. And then at this part, I'm like, okay, the sound design is just so good. Listen to it, it's on its own, because it feels like a monster like talking to you, and that's kind of what I was going for with this kind of sound, and just going on and on in the bottom, is that you're being talked to in some strange language that you don't understand, and that's kind of where that goes. Paul stretch volume goes down. And the song ends with the big old boomer. I ended it that way just because I could have just let it fade out, but I'd rather end with like an impact or something like that, because then if I make an album around this, which I don't know if I will, I can have a nice easy transition or just an easy point out for the next song to immediately start. So yeah, that's that. This song is pretty sick. I enjoy it a lot. Yeah. Let me see if I can find, yeah, I do have it right here. I think I said that if I remembered, I would take a look at this file, because a lot of the ambient sounds I've been using lately have come from this. And I've been live streaming my work on this lately, but if you don't watch my streams on Twitch, they'll disappear because I'm not going to save them. So I'll just show this to document it, I guess. But this is the Empyrean University theme. May or may not work on it more, probably not. But yeah, just got a lot of ideas from it. I'm waiting for play to load. It's almost done. Making little sketches like this when you're inspired. Like I wrote this right after I played Elden Ring. So I was sort of inspired by like the Elden Ring's, I don't remember what it's called, like the Academia or whatever in that, and Dark Souls 2 music. It's like the Dark Souls 2 like hub place music. I don't remember what it's called, but that kind of thing with like the chimes going on the top. I love that, and I'm just like, let me take a crack at it and make some like game music. That's kind of what I was going for here. Making little sketches like that are just for fun, just for what you're inspired on, and then just eating up the samples from it, using them elsewhere, just reusing that stuff is perfect. Like that's really helps my workflow, and it makes it not as daunting when you're starting something from scratch. Like you're going to be able to pull ideas from something that already exists that nobody else knows about, and I just kind of enjoy that. And there's no reason for this to come out either, because it's not even that good. It's not even that developed, so I don't know what else is loading, but it's probably just drums that I haven't used. So Probably all we're going to do for that, because I might actually work on that more. I don't know. But I've been pulling from just that little section for like over a month now, probably. So doing stuff like that is fun. And then if I come back to this, then it's like, hey, I retroactively reference my music. That's crazy. And this is just a simple little sketch where I just took this pad. I don't even know how I did this. It's just a cool one. And just wrote some stuff on top of it. Just trying to use instruments I don't normally use, like bass clarinet, oboe, stuff like that. Having some fun. But yeah, hope you guys learned something from this video. If you have any questions that I can answer about either this project or the other one, I don't care. If you just have anything that you're interested in, I'm fine with answering them. Leave the questions down below. And I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you all next time.